Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you game 2 in a best of 3 between Player and Włochaty in the semi-finals of the second European tournament. Now, today we are moving on from the first game where Włochaty defeated Player with the 2nd Armoured French versus the 12th SS Panzer, and it was a quite convincing win for Włochaty. He definitely needed a bit more of a push in Phase B, which he found with his M4 Sherman, in order to outright win that game, and it was really well played by Włochaty. Player, I think, just made a little bit too many mistakes and lost his Firefly unnecessarily. However, the tables are turned. Player is going to be on the Allied side with the 2nd Infantry, and on the Axis side, Włochaty is using the Festung Gross-Paris. Now, this is really interesting for me because I haven't really seen Włochaty use the Festung before. I've seen him on divisions like the 17th SS and other infantry-based divisions on the side of the Axis, but never the Festung. And to be honest, it kind of makes sense that he is playing it due to his infantry playstyle. He very much likes to rely on the Panzerschrecks alongside sort of line infantry, and the Festung certainly get a lot of that. On the side of the Allies, it's more of a standard pickup. The 2nd Infantry, definitely one of those high-tiered divisions that's definitely normally left up after the initial bans of things like the 7th Armoured and the 1st Panzer and so on. So I think the 2nd Infantry is quite a common pick that we will see throughout the rest of the tournament, because the other top tier divisions will generally be banned, and the 2nd Infantry is quite a versatile division that can do a lot of things that the others can. So what are the strengths of the 2nd Infantry? Well, you have, of course, M4s in Phase A, and that is something that allows you to break through fire support weapons like the Pak-38s and IG-18s in the early game. The Festung won't have IG-18s, I don't think, but they will have, obviously, AT guns at their disposal. The other great thing is they support infantry very well with their machine guns, and the 2nd Infantry has a lot of great infantry that it can use. So it has all of the Ranger units, Ranger supports, Ranger assaults, also has Ranger marauders as recon, and those units have their specific uses. So Ranger supports at range, then you have like Ranger assaults at close range with the flamethrowers. Ranger marauders are fantastic for ambushing whilst providing recon information. So that is a lot of the strength of the 2nd Infantry, especially in Phase A. Moving into Phase B, it more becomes about the artillery, potentially the Air Force. It's one of those decisions that the 101st often has to make, is whether or not you rely on artillery or whether or not you rely on an Air Force. And that's something we'll have to see as the game moves on. On the side of the Festung, Beverungs, Landeschützen, it looks like Włochaty is going to be using a bunch of Panzerschrecks. But let's just have a look at the specific deployments. I'll just show you guys where the units are going. We have quite a concentrated force from Włochaty on this bottom side. Is that an IG-18? It is. So I said they didn't have them. That was a lie. Up on this top side for Player, we've got a rifle unit, Ranger Marauders further down providing recon. For the factory, it's going to be 2 units of Ranger Assaults, 3 units of Ranger Assaults with a Ranger support in there. Going to be some Ranger Marauders and of course the Ranger Leader backed up by the M4. Ranger Marauders for that road, very common. M1 gun on the bottom side with Ranger Assaults pushing for this tree line, I would assume, and recon on the bottom side. On the top side for Włochaty, as we see the engagements begin, Panzerschreck takes out the Duck. Duck does unload the rifles in time though, they're backed up by Landeschützen. In the factory, Opel Blitz goes down, but the Beverungs manage to get out in time. And there's going to be 2 units of Beverungs here with the 2 Panzerschrecks. Beverungs are fantastic in defensive positions, so I would not be surprised to see them do pretty well against the Ranger units at range. However, these Ranger assaults, they do manage to flame out one of the Panzerschrecks early on, which is pretty important. 3 units of Beverungs, plus a Feldgendarmerie are moving into the other side of the forest. This could, or other side of the factory, that could definitely overwhelm any infantry that Player tries to push in there. Meanwhile, on the bottom side, it's going to be 2 more units of Beverungs with the IG-18, Feldgendarmerie, Aufklar, and also a Pak-38, the 2-star one there, given the extra veterancy by the Feldgendarmerie, and of course the Panhard MG that brought in the Aufklar. So, on the top side, Landeschützen accompanied by the Panzerschreck, are going to push back the rifles for the time being, but the M4DD is getting involved with its 5HE main gun, so that may swing things in favour of player up there if that engagement continues. But there is now a Puma on the way, and this is a unit that is often perceived in the early game to be the turning point. Sometimes these Pumas can do really, really well, and really could take control of the game for the Festung, leading them into Phase B with an advantage, whereas the Puma can sometimes just die and leave the Festung a bit lackluster in Phase A. But I really like how Włochaty has managed to get 2 units of Bavarongs, or even 3 units of Bavarongs, into the other side of the factory, a place that he would usually not get to, and this has meant that he can almost ambush the Ranger Assaults they're brought in to try and contest that. You can see they did use their flamethrowers initially on one of the squads, but are failing to take out the second squad effectively. Now the Ranger leader did move up here, used its grenade on the Bavarongs here, as you can see. A really nice job there by player to make that micro happen. Ranger Assault trying to take on these Bavarongs. The Bavarongs jumping in and out of the buildings to avoid the flamethrower fire. Will likely kill off this Ranger Assault at some point. Meanwhile on the bottom side, Włochaty is trying to put on quite a bit of pressure. But there goes the Feldgendarmerie. Włochaty's not going to be happy about that. He's already had one of his units pinned down. The second one's going to be pinned there as well. That's going to be instantly surrendered with the command nowhere to be seen. And this Bavarongs, if it gets pinned down as well, could also be surrendered, which would leave Włochaty in a pretty dreadful spot in this factory. Losing that command is something that actually happened to Włochaty in the last game. We saw him lose command around a bunch of infantry. It didn't really happen the same sort of way in that game, in the first game. But in this one, he's certainly being punished for losing his command infantry so easily. And especially with the Feldgendarmerie, they have a massive radius. Could probably have sat in this building and still provided command for the Bavarongs on the other side. So I think, in my opinion, Włochaty definitely needs to be a little bit more careful with his command in that sort of situation, because losing it can definitely cause chain surrenders in places that you don't really want them. Meanwhile on the bottom side though, Aufklärer with the couple of Bavarongs here in the Feldgendarmerie are certainly making a lot of ground. It's going to force player to bring in an M4DD to counter the push. Meanwhile in the centre though, player is starting to take control here, and with all those Bavarongs falling back and taking a lot of fire from the Ranger supports as they do so, Ranger Assaults aren't going to be able to come in and reinforce, which may stop any future Bavarongs from making too much ground. Because if these Ranger Assaults do get into the edge of this factory, they can flame the Bavarongs as they come in, and that will definitely leave the Bavarongs in a sad spot. This Puma though, it can definitely help out. It can do quite a lot of damage to infantry at close range with its machine gun because of its high veterancy, but you can see players trying to sneak up here with the Ranger Marauders, get into the building next to the Puma and take that out. Whether or not he's going to be successful remains to be seen, and he is not going to be, as the Bavarongs managed to kill the Ranger Marauders just in time. And the Ranger lead here in threatening distance of surrendering 2 units of Bavarongs, so they are going to fall back as the Bavarongs move forwards. Now if these Bavarongs are microed properly, then player will not have an opportunity to use his flamethrower. However, player is going to utilise his positioning of the Ranger Assaults to make that happen. Meanwhile on the bottom side, Bavarongs are making a lot of ground, and Lander shoots in, primed to bump into those Ranger Marauders. They have also managed to take out or force back the 6-pounder on the bottom side. This M1 gun having to fall back from its initial position, otherwise it would have been run down by the Bavarongs. But once again, the Feldgendarmerie in a pretty sticky spot, and that could leave these units open to surrender if the engagement continues. Now a Panzerschreck is on the way. That's going to be used to try and take out the M4DD, but with this Ranger Assault moving into this building and burning the Bavarongs, that could very easily happen to any other units that are in this position. This Panzerschreck's going to try and get into the building there to take out the M4DD, but due to the positioning of the M4, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And while those Ranger Assaults take out another unit of Bavarongs there, that's going to be another surrender. No command to be seen. If Włochaty relies on Feldgendarmerie in the early game for his command, then he definitely won't have that much availability of it, because I believe you only get 1 card with like 2 Feldgendarmerie on it. So He's definitely starved of command in the early game if he is relying solely on them. And that is causing problems, as you can see. But the Panzerschreck, will it find a shot on the M4DD? This is very important. It actually misses the shot. That's a 2-star Panzerschreck with 9 accuracy. Misses, I believe they have 9 accuracy, 10 accuracy. Misses the M4DD at less than 200 meter range. That is rather unfortunate for włochaty. The rifles got right on top of him and certainly stopped that from being effective. Wow. Pretty lucky for player there, but this M4DD is safe for now. Cannot be seen by the Pak-14 Puma. It looks like it should be, but the train cars do provide a break in line of sight, as you can see. The ones that don't are the ones that don't have wood on them, as you can see. So that's something to know if you ever play on Colombelles. But yeah, most of the trains do block line of sight. It's just the train cars that don't have wood on them or like stuff on them that don't. Now this M4DD is going to be taking shots to the Landeschützen, probably going to end up taking shots to the Puma, but look at this on the bottom side. The M4DD gets caught with its pants down, gets shot in the side armour by the Pak-38. Lovely job there by włochaty, finding that kill. Puma's now gone really aggressive though, straight up into the face of an M7DD. That's going to try and get out of there. M1 gun will be moving up to try and protect it, but that M7... I think its days are numbered as the Puma gets very, very close. It really does depend on the micro here from player. He's keeping it tight against the tree line. That's really important as he moves the M1 gun up. The thing is, with the Landeschützen in tow, they can deal with this M1 gun should it be in the way. And I believe that włochaty knows it's there since he has had his infantry in position here for a long time and he forced it back initially, so he knows there's an M1 gun about, and he definitely confirms that now as the Landeschützen engage the M1 gun. Now with this M4DD falling back due to the Ju-188 bombing strike, it has come into line of sight of the Pak-40. Pak-40 certainly not performing though, and not finding the kill just yet, but will do eventually. We'll see that go down, I'm sure. Transmission damage. Surely to be followed by a kill. Puma, that's going to be taking shots at the M4 as well, but that's going to be a dead M4 and the factory pretty much surrounded. We're seeing a +2 in favour of włochaty. He's certainly got great control here, but there goes the command. I don't believe the command needed to be in the tree line there. Once again, włochaty being lax with his command positioning, in my opinion. Just having them behind and making sure that you turn off the option which makes them auto cover, that would be ideal, because you could just tuck them in the corner there. They'd never be revealed to anything outside. And it's not like you need them to be on the edge, because you've got these 2 units of infantry that can kill off the enemy. Anyway, M4DD did come in. It cleaned up the Puma here, and the Landeschützen, well, they managed to kill off the AT. Now, if these Landeschützen manage to stay like in the middle of the forest, they shouldn't really be spotted by any of these vehicles anytime soon, so that may allow włochaty to retain some of that ground. Ranger Marauders might take a shot at the VulcanHDGaming, depends if player wants to reveal those. He might not want to, because that recon position is actually quite nice. But now we have moved into phase B. włochaty's going to be bringing in more reinforcements. He's going to be going straight for that factory. Since he has it surrounded, it's unlikely that it's got reinforcements for a while, and therefore he can try and take it back for himself. But personally, I think just some investment into surrounding the factory just that little bit more may be a better choice, especially on the top side. He's got a nice salient here with the IG-18 and the Landeschützen. Just get a tank up here to control that, and then like a tank on this bottom side would be really good to engage these M4s at range, and the Marder can definitely do that, but investing into like a second Marder I think would be a great idea. Now that Ranger Marauder, it does put up a good fight, but unfortunately gets killed off by the Beverungs there. M7DD, well, that's found the range onto the Pak-40. Nice fire position command from player. Basically fires short of the Pak-40, allows the HE to pin down the actual AT gun itself, so that he doesn't have to push the M7 into the 1,200 meter range. So here comes 3 units of ROA, accompanied by a KM Führer, which will give them the 2-star veterancy. These ROA are pretty scary, honestly, at close range. They have 14 HE that they can use at 100 meter range, and they have 4 HE that they can use at longer ranges, which isn't substantial, but it's still something. M4DD, that's going to be heading towards the top side of the factory. Currently its fast move command will put it right next to a Panzerschreck squad, which is something that Włochaty may be able to take advantage of, but we'll have to wait and see if it actually goes that far. I'm sure player will use it to engage some infantry along the way, so it may not get to its intended destination. Xylophone has also been brought up. That's going to be potentially pinning down all of these infantry squads, especially since they are quite concentrated. And the Xylophone is so good at doing that. So here comes the Panzerschreck. It's trying to sneak up onto the M4DD, but with this Ranger Marauder in position, I believe the Ranger Marauders should spot the Panzerschreck before it takes the shot. And the M4DD was aiming, I think, before the Panzerschreck was, which means that it was spotted, but due to the Panzerschreck actually being fired, M4DD does get internal fragmented. Marder actually takes out the Ranger Marauders, and now that Marder is going to be looking for a kill onto the M4DD, no doubt. Xylophone, I'm pretty sure, was spotted, so it looks like Włochaty took a step back there in these buildings. He has got one ROA off to the side, which may stop these Ranger assaults from getting up close and personal. And Włochaty is maintaining his +2 lead at this moment in time, but player does still have some sort of firepower in this factory and can still put up a fight, in my opinion. He's just in a pretty tough spot. He needs to try and get this M4DD to a position where it can be reloaded easily. M5 gun has been brought in on the top side. That has been pinned down by the Marder 3, but I think the Marder 3 must have lost line of sight, because otherwise it would want to keep shooting at the M5 gun, in my opinion, because you don't want that M5 gun to recover and just one-shot your Marder 3, or even just fire at your Marder 3, because it would pin it down very quickly due to the low armor on that tank. But yeah, these M4s can still cause quite a lot of issue, especially with this M4DD, for example, being able to engage like a Marder at close range. There's still ample opportunity for an M4 to defeat a Marder if it's 1000 meter range engagement. Now this ROA, they unload right in the face of the Ranger assaults, but the Ranger assaults, they're going to run out of napalm, and that means that their flamethrower is completely useless, and the ROA can make some more ground. So a ton of infantry here pushed into the factory, something that Włochaty is going to try and make use of to take it all the way back. He's almost completely surrounded the factory and cut off all of these forces. Another Ranger assault's going to go down there. M4DD is going to do a runner by the looks of things. Head towards the factory where he thinks it's safe. JU-188, that's going to come in with a bombing strike onto the M4DD, potentially allow the Marder to get an engagement, but it seems the Marder's going to have to worry about the M4DD that's kind of fast moving into his face. It's got an attack move order now. It's going to take the shots. Track wheel damage is going to do the job. That's going to be more than enough to deal with that Marder later down the line. You can see the 50 cal opening up as well. 50 cals can take out those Marders once again because they do have quite a low armor value. However, with Włochaty's overwhelming amount of infantry coming into this factory, it looks like player's just going to get the hell out of there. He has decided to go full retreat with his M4DD, and it's looking to survive to fight another day, as this M4DD does take out the Marder that would have been threatening it. ROA unload, take out the Xylophone, which was left behind, and the infantry is just being completely cleaned out. So Włochaty now in a really strong position, going to win the game in 11 minutes and 15 seconds if this continues, and you can just see the amount of infantry that Włochaty loves to use. He's just been flooding it into the map to try and take back this factory since Phase B. And he's managed to do so, like having completely encircled the factory. He had ample opportunity to make that happen. However, his Marders are now dead, and with no sort of 1200 meter range engagement against these M4s, the M4s can do a lot of damage, like I previously mentioned. There is still the Marder 3 on the top side that can control that area, but since there's an M5 gun on the field, that's going to make things difficult, and until Włochaty invests in some form of artillery, things may get difficult. Now we're seeing an engagement between the M4DD and the Panzer IV. The Panzer IV has a slight advantage at this sort of range because it has 14 AP versus 10 armor, whereas the M4DD has the 3 AP versus 8 armor. The other thing about the Panzer IVs is they have one more accuracy, one more base accuracy, and also this Panzer IV of course has 1-star veterancy whilst that M4 does not. So this Panzer IV has a higher potential to win that range engagement than the M4 does. It's always something to consider when you are taking on those engagements in your own games. Either way, rifles going to be trying to take on ROA at close range. Never going to end well for the rifles. The rifles do still do quite a lot of damage. They have 8 HE, but the bonus here for these rifles is they are supported by the M4DD, and that makes all the difference. Having that fire support in position is very, very important. Now we're seeing this M4DD continue the pressure onto the Panzer IV that was already slightly under pressure by the other M4. However, I'm not entirely sure why this M4DD is pressing aggressively. I think players just realised that. It's going to be sending it back to base, hopefully getting it resupplied sooner than later, because if it was, having 3 M4s in this position would be really, really nice, as he can potentially go for an encirclement of the factory himself. And this huge salient that he's finding is going to encircle the units on the bottom side. Now the M7DD knows there's an AT gun here due to the recon, so you can see the M7's currently using fire position with its 50 cals and the main gun to try and make that happen, but the PaK-38 is going to end up opening up onto the M7DD regardless. That's actually going to weapon jam, and that's going to put it in a pretty tough spot. M4DD might be able to save the day if it can get its 50 cal and main gun on target. It looks like it will. M7DD will again survive. So M4 and M7 could both do with a supply truck. I would not be surprised to see włochaty, or player, sorry, bring one in soon enough. Panzer IV going to be engaging the M4DD at close range, does find the transmission damage, but misses that shot, that second shot at close range. That may allow the M4DD to get out of there, but the way it's reversing, no chance. Gets taken out. Now we see the xylophone go for the kill onto the PaK-38 is not successful, but look at this ground that players gain back on the bottom side. That's a +1. And all of this investment into the factory is now completely useless for włochaty. He's definitely left himself in a dire position on the bottom side of the map, as it has been overwhelmed by these M4DDs. I mentioned that they can certainly turn things around, and I also mentioned at the start of the game their effectiveness against things like PaK-38s, because they struggle to be penetrated from the front armour by the 10 AP. That's something that player is taking advantage of here to really control this bottom side. This PaK-38 basically has no chance. However, the Panzer IV going to be coming and taking a shot into the side armour of the M4DD. That's going to leave the M4 in a very tough spot, and it's going to go down. So that's 2 of the 3 M4s dealt with on this bottom side. A duck has now come in to resupply the xylophone, fix up the M7 and resupply the M4. So those few units will be back online and resources that player can use moving forward. But this Panzer IV certainly saving the day so far. IG-18 on the top side still in action, and that's taking out some infantry along the way. KM Fiora have managed to get all the way up there towards these rifles, and honestly the KM Fiora are pretty decent at range. They do have 2 MG34s with that 8 HE. Very sort of proficient squad in combat. Now on the bottom side we're going to see more recon coming up, as włochaty has invested into the 2-star Stug. He's going to want to know that there's no AT guns here ready and waiting to take him out. For example, this M5 gun on the bottom side, and if there are any, he can try and bomb them. You can see the Ju-188 hanging about. It has spotted the Dark here alongside the xylophone, and this Ju-188 could certainly make short work of a xylophone. But look at this investment. włochaty must have been floating some points, as he does bring in 2 Tiger E's at the same time for this bottom side, and that is something that players are going to have a hard time dealing with. Now M5 guns are fantastic for dealing with Tiger E's, but M4s are not. So if włochaty can find a way to like bomb out the M5 guns, or like just discover where they are and you know, get them out of the way, then the Tigers will have an easy time pushing through. And lovely job here by player to just surrender the remainder of that infantry that was behind enemy lines. The bomber did come in and kill the Dirk. It did fail to kill the xylophone, but you can see the Landeshoots in there with their Kar 98 actually take out the xylophone. That is absolutely astounding. M4DD has managed to internal fragment the Panzer IV, but cannot pursue the Panzer IV due to the positioning of the Stug on the bottom side. So it looks like włochaty is going to get away with that engagement for the time being. You can see the Tigers now coming in to assist the spear troop that have been brought up. They're going to discover this infantry eventually, but initially engaging the M4DD here, both of them right next to each other, waiting to engage, and well, that one makes short work of the M4DD. That's going to be another one down. 3 out of 3 dead on the bottom side. The M4DD on the top side has used up all its 50 cal ammunition, but still in action. Could definitely be used to take out the Landeschützen and KM here, but of course we'll have to be worried about the Armada 3, which is most likely the reason that it's still sitting in cover there. Now in the town, or in the factory, sorry, the ROA engaging rifle leaders. You can see they are going to start trying to secure the buildings on the edge of the factory, which is sometimes a mistake because it does leave those units vulnerable to attack from outside the factory, but killing those off would secure włochaty quite a lot of ground, so I can see why he would want to. One thing that did just happen though, I believe like a couple of units of infantry just got taken out for free there by the Armada 3, so a bit of a mistake by a player in that regard. M5 gun, that's going to be pushing up. You can see that M4, that died previously, we saw that. But now the M5 gun's going to be pushed up into the face of the Stug 3. Stug 3 potentially could take out the M5 gun if the M5 gun misses again, because it does of course have its MG42 and it was successful in doing so. The only threat here is that it's under fire by the M7DD. And if the M7DD continues to fire, it will eventually force back the Stug 3, allowing the M5 gun to recover, and then the M5 gun might get the kill. On this bottom side, Panzer Grenadiers, they are going to be fired upon by the M5 gun. I feel like this is a bit of a mistake from player, but then again, he can't really allow the Panzer Grenadiers to get in the face of his M5 gun because he doesn't have any infantry really to defend it. He's got the recon there, but what are they going to do against a full squad of Panzer Grenadiers? Either way, looks like włochaty wants to try and deal with that. He's taken it down to 1 health, which may just be enough. Stug 3, that's trying to make ground onto the M7DD, but as you can see, the Stug 3, it was distracted long enough by the M7DD that it allowed the M5 gun to recover, and now the M5 gun is going to get the better of the Stug 3. Now what włochaty needs is another Ju-188 to take out the second M5 gun that he's having problems with. As mentioned previously, these ROA moving up to the edge of the factory does leave them vulnerable to these sort of engagements, and you can see that many of the squads have already been taken out, which is unfortunate, and here the rifles will probably be pinned down, but due to the rifle leader being nearby, they won't surrender. Instead, the ROA will surrender because there's no command in the factory. So the KM, well, they are there, but they're on the wrong side. So that's not going to help włochaty anytime soon. And what is amazing to me is how player is keeping up the pressure at this point in the game. We've moved into Phase C, and włochaty will have like Panthers at his disposal if he wants to make ground. Of course, you can see he's currently relying on the Tigers, and one of the Tigers has gone down. I'm not entirely sure what to, but definitely one of them has died, and now the M5 gun's taken out the Stug as well. It seems like players' use of these M5 guns has paid off. M10, that's going to be engaged by the Tiger though, and the Tiger should find that kill. It does have 15 AP versus the 8 armor, so a shot on target should absolutely annihilate it, and that's exactly what happens. Those Wolverines are basically all player has to rely on in the late game. That's the highest AP tank he gains access to as the 2nd infantry. Now we're going to be seeing the M5 gun try and engage the Tiger, but the Tiger with its 5 HE potentially will find the kill, but as you can see, the Tiger does get crew wounded. Now this Panzer IV, it's a bluff here, he doesn't have any ammunition, he can't do anything with it, but what will happen is the M5 gun will target the Panzer IV instead of the Tiger, allowing the Tiger time to recover. Now włochaty's going to come in with the D520 and finish off the M5 gun as the M5 gun continues to engage the Panzer IV. And it kind of worked. Obviously the Panzer IV, or the Tiger, had nothing to do with the kill, but it gave time for these D520s to kill the M5 gun whilst the M5 gun was shooting at the Panzer IV instead of the Tiger, where it may have potentially hit due to aim increase over time. Like if you continue to fire at the same unit, your accuracy actually increases over time on units. So that is something that włochaty avoided by bluffing with the Panzer IV. Either way, this factory, as you can see, like on the edge, like as soon as włochaty tried to secure those edge buildings, he suffered because of it. And now he's left with a lot less units in the factory than he originally had. Also the KM getting taken out by the Rhino. And that is, of course, a problem. But 51% territory still in favour of włochaty, and he still has 1,500 points to his name, so it's not the end of the world. However, player relying on a lot of recon here is a bit worrying. It may tell us that player is lacking infantry availability at this point in the game. That may mean he will struggle for the rest of it. Now, it really does depend on the effectiveness of this recon. The recon at close range can still do quite a bit of damage. They do, of course, have 6 HE apiece, and if they're used in conjunction with other recon squads, then that can be 12 HE, 18 HE if there's 3 squads. So if you have 3 units of recon engaging 1 unit of infantry, I mean, there's opportunity there. But JU-188 going to be coming in with the bombing strike. That's going to hit the Jeep and potentially kill off the recon as well. Does manage to, so that's one of the squads gone down already. ROA are going to be able to move back in, since the Rhino's definitely not going to be as effective. And they're all going to engage these rifles. And those rifles should probably surrender. There's no command nearby. Now further down, these rifles, they are on the main road. They are under pressure. M5 gun has been taken out eventually on this bottom side. But if this continues to go the way it is, I feel like włochaty's bombers will get the better of player. Especially if player doesn't invest in any AA or fighters himself to try and counter those. Now at this point it may be a bit pointless to invest into fighters because player needs units on the ground to take ground in order to win the game, and since he's running out low on infantry, it may be impossible to do so, especially in the factory area. And in the open on the bottom side, how's he going to defeat a tiger with his armor? It's going to be very, very difficult. On the top side as well, same deal. 88 is going to find it hard to push on the M10, so his only chance really is to get through the factory, but without infantry that's not going to happen. Seems like all of players' options are really exhausted at this point. So włochaty's kind of used this game to attrition player down to a point where he just can't win, it seems like. It really does depend on what comes in as reinforcements, because I am almost certain that players really low on infantry availability, if not completely out. And that's why we're seeing so much reliance on the M4A1s, and I mean even an M16 MGMC coming in when he could definitely use more rifles at this point, for example, to take on these Beverlongs and ROA in the factory. So, how can włochaty really secure this? Well, I'd like to see him bring in more heavy tanks, but it seems as though he has a reliance on these Tiger Es when he can definitely purchase things like Panthers as the Festung in the late game. So it just depends whether or not he has those on his division. Like, if he has a Panther, then he may be able to just bring it up this road and just clean house. Since there isn't any AT guns left on the side of player either, not really anything to really threaten włochaty's play. What he just needs is recon to make sure there's nothing there, and then a heavy tank can just go to work. And he does have more recon coming in. He's got the Palan MG here with the Avklara. He's got the Spear Throop on the bottom side. I mean, there's no shortage of recon really for włochaty, but it's just whether or not he decides to utilize that alongside some armor to really push this home. On the top side, it looks like włochaty's going to be relying on a couple of Panzerjägers with the Befehl Panzer 35S. It seems like these are coming in on the wrong phase, but it does tell me that it's unlikely that włochaty has anything stronger than a Tiger on his division, so that's something. And I think it mainly just comes down to włochaty's playstyle, right? He definitely loves to prefer infantry engagements and infantry management in games, and therefore he doesn't necessarily need to rely on heavy tanks so much, especially things like Panthers, which are really, really expensive. He'd much rather have a tank that, although it still has some firepower, like the Tiger, has a lot of infantry capability or anti-infantry capability as well. For example, Tiger has 3 machine guns and 5 HE on its main gun, whereas I think a Panther has 4 HE on its main gun and only has 2 machine guns. So it's quite a big difference when it comes to infantry support. And against the 2nd Infantry, especially if włochaty tailors his divisions based on what he's playing against, the Tigers actually work out quite well, because it's unlikely that the M or the 2nd Infantry will have anything that will really penetrate a Tiger unless he gets ambushed by an M5 gun, for example. So here comes a P38 to try and take out the JU-188, but you can see he's punished almost immediately there for bringing that in, because włochaty has already invested into 2 D520s, Now, of course, player did also invest in the AA, so it may stop these D520s from finding the kill, but it does not, and that is a costly engagement for player. I did mention that it would probably be futile at this point to invest in anti-air capabilities versus those bombers, because he would need to try and take back things on the ground. But I mean, due to his current position, it seems as though he kind of has nothing else to spend his cash on, and therefore went for the fighter in that case. Now, those bombers, what they did was they forced the M4s back, and it allowed this group of Panzerjägers and the Befehlpanzer 35 to come in and clean those up. But what you can see on the bottoms, or in the factory even, is that this ROA, that's going to get surrendered by the 30 cal Jeep and the MGMC. They get very aggressive. However, the 88, that seems to have taken out the Wolverine that was making a push. So a lot of engagements happening at the same time there, but ultimately włochaty is coming out on top. He's found a huge salient up here. He's actually ended up killing off a truck there that was bringing in another M5 gun. That M5 gun got absolutely ruined by the Panzer 1B and that tank combination. Infantry there, they're going to get revealed and wiped out by the 88. Ju-188 is going to come in for the bombing strike onto the M3 OP here to try and find the kill and stop that from being a threat, but it does not quite pin down the M3 OP, and that's going to be able to continue to use its off-map to pin down this infantry, allowing the MGMC to try and find more surrenders. But in the face of a Tig E, an MGMC is not going to do anything, and it gets killed off. On this top side, Panzer 1B goes down to the M10. Now, these Panzerjägers, they're going to have to try and back off here. You can see that the Panzerjäger's running for cover as the M10 comes up the road because it cannot engage at the 1,200 meter range. But I do find it interesting that włochaty is relying quite a lot on these 88s to hold his front line at this point in the game. And he's starting to bring in more of his low-tier armor. Now, basically all of włochaty's infantry will have been used up as well at this point. So player and włochaty both messing with the dregs of their infantry. And that's why we're seeing so many of these tanks come in on both sides. Now, both of those Panzerjägers, they got taken out by the M10s. There is still the Befehlpanzer 35S behind this tree line here, and that may kill off an M10 at close range, honestly. So that's something that włochaty will have to be careful of, or player will have to be careful of as he moves up. But it seems as though włochaty still has a little bit of momentum on this bottom side. It really depends if the M4A1 can prevent that or not, because if the M4 ends up like engaging the spear through, for example, and killing them off, then that would stop them from revealing the enemy infantry and therefore stop those infantry from going down and stop włochaty from making ground. But that is not the case. Pak 40 takes out the Rhino. Pak 40's got shot onto the M7DD. Both of the D520s coming for the strafing runs as well. It looks like this M7DD is going to go down. It won't be able to get a shot off onto the Pak 40 in time. And that is job done for włochaty. So he is free to move up into the face of the rifles here with the Panzer 1B if he wants to. And that will allow him to break through entirely on this bottom side. Looks like the D520s there are going to end up killing the M7DD, and things are completely falling apart here for player towards the end of the game. włochaty managing to clean house after what has been an absolutely insane game. Both players really going all in this one, but with włochaty coming out on top, that will take him through to the final. And well, player, all he can do at this point is try and do some damage to włochaty's forces, save his KD, but with the amount of units that have been lost throughout this game, I would not be surprised to see a large amount of kills and deaths on both sides. We've had a game that lasted almost the full 40 minutes so far. 3 minutes and 50 seconds left on the clock. Panzer 1B now advancing slowly but surely. These small tanks are really good for cleaning up infantry with those two machine guns there, and that's exactly what it's being used for here. On that top side, the last stand from player is the Rhino and the M10, and the M3OP is just left out to dry as both of those tanks get taken out. And this may be a complete whitewash, as almost every unit on the map that włochaty has been, or player has been killed. Now it looks like player's just going to be memeing, bringing in these M3 commands, throwing his units away. That must be almost his entire division used up. And what does surprise me is włochaty comes in the late game with a Panther D. Personally, I feel like this Panther D would have been well suited way before these Panzer 39s. So that really surprises me that he didn't use that sooner, but either way at that point he'd already won, so it probably didn't really matter. Manages to find the important kills nonetheless. And all these M3 cars are really doing is just preventing the front line from falling forwards, but they aren't really much of a threat to anything on the side of włochaty due to them being completely unarmed. And that's pretty much it. I mean, 2 minutes left until włochaty wins. Surely, player is just going to ride this out till the end. There is nothing left. The 2nd Infantry completely destroyed. Imagine that. An entire division wiped out in a day. And all they have left is their Air Force, which probably won't do too well. 225 HE power bombs might take out a Panther D, to be honest. Oh, that could have been pretty close, actually, because the bomb landed just behind the Panther D, where it has least armor. So that would have done a lot of damage. But player's going to surrender after that attempt. And after 38 minutes and 21 seconds, włochaty does come out victorious. Wow. Absolute whitewash at the end. Completely just ruined every unit that player had. It was a close one, though, up to the point where player ran out of infantry, I think. Then after that, I think włochaty just had a little bit more left, and it really allowed him to capitalize on the remainder of the units. Player's armor just wasn't quite up to scratch versus what the Festung can bring in the late game. So 4,340 kills to 2,625 losses is quite significant. Kills early game for the 2nd Infantry. Ranger Assaults definitely went to work against the Bavarians there. Really nice micro actually of these Ranger Assaults by player. I really enjoyed seeing him allow the Ranger Assaults to use their flamethrowers where otherwise they wouldn't have been able to. This M7DD, it did initially come under threat by the Puma, but was not killed and then used very well to take out multiple units, multiple fire support units, the Pak 40 IG-18s, Pak 38s. Also claimed a kill onto the Panzer IV, which is quite something. M4DDs, they did trade against these Marders. Managing to get those into position is quite smart from player. Finding those 1,000 meter range engagements is really important against the Marders because you can pin them down very quickly. Even if it's a 800 meter range, that's even better because then you get the 50 cal on target as well, and it helps pin those down very, very fast. M5 guns, great choice. One of them did really well. I think it was this one, took out the Stug and so on. But the others were unfortunately left unsupported eventually due to the lack of infantry, and that did allow włochaty to clean them up quite well with just infantry advance himself, and that caused the M5 guns to have to fire with the HE, which led to them being bombed because the position was given away. M10 killed off a couple of Panzerjägers on the top side, but nothing too much to write home about. In terms of losses, well, włochaty's infantry play was on point. I feel like he could have avoided the flamethrowers a little bit more in the factory, but otherwise he knew what he needed to do with his infantry, especially in the early game. Came in with those 3 Bavarians and just completely ran through that factory. Unfortunately, mismicroed his command, I think both on the bottom side and in the factory. The Feldgendarmerie both died in suspicious circumstances. I don't think they really needed to be where they were when they died. And that is something I think włochaty can work on because it's something that's happened in multiple games now. He loses his command and then he gets punished for that. Definitely one of the weaknesses that he has in his playstyle. But look at this Landerschutzen, taking out the M1 gun, taking out a xylophone. That is a 15-point infantry squad, guys. It took out a lot of points worth of units. That's like 100 points, a xylophone, M1 gun, 60 points. Ranger Marauders, 35 points, rifles, 20 points. And that's just absolutely absurd. Marder 3 took out a couple of units, nothing exciting there. Beverong's trading nicely, ROA trading very nicely. And the JU-188s coming in throughout that game definitely made a difference. Tiger kind of went to work. This initial one didn't do too much, killed the M4DD, but nothing much else. This second one did a little bit better, taking out the M10 and the MGMC and the Rhino. D520 strafed one of the M10s to death. P38 Lightning went down and one of the M5 guns. We also saw the D520 take out an M7DD as well. So 2 armoured kills there for the D520s is not something you see very often, but displayed by Włochaty in this game. And that's Charlotte. That is Włochaty's victory. He wins 2 games in the best of 3, which leads him to the final. Congratulations to Włochaty. We'll be moving on. Player will be going to the 3rd place final to see who claims 3rd place. But next up we have Gonzo versus Herr Robert, so that will be definitely an exciting matchup. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to that as much as I am, and we'll see who comes out on top to face Włochaty in the final of the 2nd European tournament. But until then, hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.